Welcome to episode 98 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 who are pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories, their way, and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Gail Lukasik, an accomplished author whose journey into writing took a remarkable turn later in life. Gail never intended to write mysteries, but a challenge from her son changed everything. She fell in love with the genre and eventually became a published mystery novelist, despite facing rejection and setbacks along the way. However, her most personal and unexpected discovery came when researching her own family history. Gail revealed a hidden secret that reshaped her identity and led to a powerful memoir about race, secrecy, and self-discovery. In this episode, Gail shares how she overcame the challenges of breaking into publishing, why she's drawn to the structure and resolution of mystery novels, and how uncovering a deeply hidden family secret transformed her understanding of herself. If you've ever thought about writing your own story or embracing a long-held passion, you won't want to miss this conversation. Without further ado, please welcome author Gail Lukasik to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Gail. I understand that something happened as you were approaching your 60th birthday that really radically changed your life. What was it?
Would you be talking about the publication of my first mystery?
Sure.
That is an interesting story. Actually, I never intended to write a mystery novel. They became very popular some years ago. A lot of female writers were like Sarah Paretsky, Marcia Mueller, started taking over the genre. And I was reading them like crazy. I couldn't get enough. So my son came to me one day and he said, "Mom, you're always reading these mysteries. Why don't you try writing them?" And at that point in my life, I was a published poet. So I never thought I could do that. So why not? Let's give it a try, right? Let's just see how this goes. So I did. It took me less than a year, and I created this character by the name of Lee Gerard. And she was a breast cancer survivor from Chicago, was a teacher, decided to start her life over and go to Door County, Wisconsin, one of my favorite places, what do we call it? The Cape Cod of the Midwest, right?
That's right.
That tells your audience what it looks like. It's the most beautiful place you can ever imagine. So I wrote the book in under a year, as I said. And then, now remember, I've never written a novel. So I started sending it around to agents. Boy, did I get a lot of rejection right off the bat. And sometimes the agent or the publisher would say, not just a form letter, but they would critique the book. And I thought, if you're going to do this, you better get a tough skin. So I started reading the critiques, and if they were good, I would change the book. One woman wrote and said, "I really like the mystery, everything's good, but your character of Lee is a little too acerbic." So I thought she was funny. But I guess I could see that. So I changed her. I made her softer. Guess what? The next time it went out, I got a publisher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think that was within a few years. Here's where the story goes awry. I had a really good publisher. We went through the whole editing process. I had photographs taken of myself for the cover. And I also lined up Nevada Barr. She was going to review the book, and she, at that time, very famous mystery author. Right before we were ready to do the galleys, the publisher went out of business.
Oh, no.
And during that year that we went through all this, I wrote the second book. So now I had two books with no publisher. So I thought, I don't know if I can do this anymore. This is really hard, really hard. So my husband said to me, "You know what? You'll always be a writer. Just keep at it. Don't give up." So I had an opportunity soon after that to go to a mystery writers conference. It's no longer in existence, called Love is Murder in Chicago. And I pitched the book. And within a week, I had a contract.
Wow.
But by the time this book came out, I think it was 9 or 10 years. But I didn't give up. I didn't give up because it was that important to me.
That's neat. What is it about mysteries that you really like?
Oh, that's such a good question. I love that question. First of all, you have the puzzle, right? You have the murder. You have the sleuth. Lee was my sleuth. And then you have to go through all these red herrings. She'll investigate this, she'll investigate that, she'll talk to that person. And then by the end, when she solves the mystery, the world is put right again. What is more satisfying for us? That we go through some ordeal, murder upsets the world, and then at the end, it's back in order. And I love that about a mystery. A happy ending.
Yeah.
Plus a puzzle. I love puzzles.
That's neat.
Do them
You have not written mysteries before, so this first time
No.
was a real step out of your comfort zone.
Totally. I never would have done it if my son hadn't challenged me. Why don't you try it? Yeah, and it was a learning experience, the whole thing, not just the writing, but going through the whole rejection process. So if any of your listeners are thinking, I'd like to write a book, but I would like to go the traditional route, not self-publish, you'll have to go through the rejection period. And it's a learning. It really, for me, I learned a lot about writing and writing fiction and mysteries. So you just have to be open.
You do indeed, and have a tough skin when you're submitting publishers.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Is Lee your main character? Is that your counter personality or your like hidden personality?
I love that. Yeah, people ask me that. Lee says the things I wish I could say. He does the things I wish I had the courage to do. I live through Lee. No, she is not me. That's why I had so much fun with her. Because she will get in people's faces. She always has a smart remark. She's not afraid. She's already faced her worst fears by having breast cancer. So she's already done that. It broke up her marriage. So now I'm going for it. I'm going to do what I want.
Okay. So she's not you, but your personality may be what you'd like to be if you had to design your own life, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what's the title of your book?
The Lee Gerard series, the first one is Destroying Angels. Second is Death's Door. And the third one is Peak Season for Murder.
Okay.
So in between writing those three books, I wrote what we call in the industry a standalone mystery, which is The Lost Artist, which was a lot of fun to write.
Oh.
And then I forgot one. Just recently, came out in 2023, I took a real turn with mystery and wrote a Gothic historical mystery called The Darkness Surrounds Us, which is still, you can get most of these on Amazon, not all of them.
How many books have you written?
I've written 5 mysteries and 2 nonfiction books, and then some poetry.
I was aware of one of your nonfiction books, What They Never Told Us: True Stories of Family Secrets and Hidden Identities Revealed. That title alone is intriguing. What is this book about?
It's about people as adults who discover a family secret, and the family secret is them.
Really? Okay.
In many cases, they find out either one or both of the people who raised them are not their parents, their biological parents. In some cases, they're adopted. In some cases, they were donor conceived. And in some cases, there was an affair or something of that nature that they didn't know was covered up. So it becomes the family secret, and they're the family secret.
So these are true stories.
They're true stories. Actually, I spent about 2 years interviewing people for this book. Thank God for Zoom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because these people are across the whole U.S. They're everywhere. And they're very brave people to share these family secrets. I'll give you an example of one that has been getting a lot of press lately. Brad Yule's story. He's a Texas cop who, through a DNA test, which, by the way, he and his wife gave as Christmas gifts to each other, just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know how to look at it, Brad found out via the DNA test that he was adopted. It was several years after he took the test, and this woman contacted him through Ancestry, saying that she thinks he's her lost nephew. As it turns out, he was. He had no idea he was adopted. He was 48 when he found out. And then he goes in search of his biological parents. His mother, unfortunately, was deceased, but his father was still alive, and he was serving a life sentence for murder in Angola prison in Louisiana.
Wow.
Yes. And it's an unbelievable story in many ways, not just that discovery, but what happens afterwards. I don't want to ruin it in case people want to read the book, which I hope they do. Is he struggled with whether he was going to meet this man, because what he said to me is, look, I've dealt with criminals my whole life. I don't want to go and meet someone who says to me, I didn't do it, it wasn't my fault, because that's usually what I hear. But he changes his mind. He said, I had to figure out who I really was. So he does meet him. And that first meeting in the prison pretty much shocks him. So I'm just going to leave it there because I think people will really enjoy this story. It has a very upbeat ending.
Okay. But it's
Yeah.
kind of like a real mystery in real life.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because each of these stories in the book, I tried to write as if I was writing a mystery. I used those same skills that I used to write mystery novels for each of these true stories. There's the discovery, then there's the search, and then there's the resolution. So it's the same structure that I would have used for my mysteries.
I understand you became interested in writing as a very young girl. What prompted that?
I did. Think back. I wrote my first little short story, it was little, and my first poem when I was about 8. And I just continued to either write little poems or stories, or what I would do is I would journal. I discovered later, I didn't understand it as a child, what I was doing, but later it occurred to me that I was trying to process the way I processed the world around me, how I took it in. I grew up in a sort of a chaotic household, so it was my way to put that down on paper and get some distance and process. But I grew up in a working class neighborhood, a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. Nowhere in my world did I think I could really be a writer. It was looked on as, oh, that's a nice thing to do, but that's not what you need to earn a living. I was trained in high school. My parents took me out of college prep, and the last 2 years I was in secretarial studies. So the plan for me was to be a secretary. That's my generation. Or get married.
Right.
That was pretty much,
Mhm.
there were not many options, or teach or nursing. So to be a professional writer just wasn't in the cards. It took me a while I put myself through college. It took me a while to figure that out. That's really what I wanted to do.
I'm impressed that you started writing so early. I remember my 11th grade English teacher encouraging us to do journaling back then. But for the same reason, men didn't write journals in
Yeah.
the 1970s, and it was frowned upon.
Right.
And so I never did. And I regret that to this day, because of all those things I could have written about, the stuff that was happening as I was maturing in my thoughts and my actions, and things that happened to me or things that I did. I would have had a permanent record. And I don't.
Oh, I know. And that's such a loss. And here's the crazy thing about my parents and the house I grew up. Even though, as I said, working class, all of that, my mother started me in dance classes when I was around 4 or 5. And I ended up being a member of the Cleveland Civic Ballet Company for a short time when I was in high school, which was quite the thing. I had to audition. I have the discipline of being a ballerina, that kind of, you go to class, you're at the bar, you do floor work, you learn all that. Again, though, it was something, I don't know why I was encouraged to do that, but I think it really helped my creative side. I think I always was a creative person, but it fit into it. And it taught me discipline, which really helped me as a writer later on when I sat down and took it seriously, because you need discipline.
Mhm.
Everyone thinks, oh, creative people, they just, do this and that and so much fun. Well, it is fun, but you have to get up in the morning. You have to sit at the computer. If it's a bad day, you have to write through those. I always give myself 3 hours in the morning. And I'll sense, oh, it's a bad day. But I've been at this so long I know that you just have to write through that bad.
That's right. You can always edit it later.
All writing is writing.
But you went to college to get an English degree. So
I did.
you started writing, or you had that passion to go into that. What did you do with the degree?
What I did, of course, I got married. And my husband at the time, when we got married, was in dental school in St. Louis. So what I had to do, because I wanted him to finish, this was very important to both of us. I was the main support of the family. So I had to get any job I could get. I think it was very fortunate in St. Louis. I worked for Southwestern Bell Telephone as a lowest level rung manager. And I worked the second shift. So that meant I worked 3 to around midnight.
And this was
yeah.
back in the day when they had telephone operators?
Oh, yeah. In fact, fun story. Well, I don't know if I found it fun at the time. The operators went on strike when I was there. And so what happened is anyone who was any kind of management had to fill in. I had to go on a weekend. Man, and it was the old fashioned with the plugs. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And very little training. So they said, all right, you sit down and you put and then you do the plugs, and it was all long. It's for long distance. I hadn't a clue what I was doing. I remember at one point I was trying to do something complicated. I couldn't figure it out, and I just unplugged it. Oh, that's lost.
Oops. But you went back to school and you got a doctorate. When did you do that?
My late 30s. After we settled here in the Chicago area, my husband had his dental practice. I was doing sort of part-time work here and there. I was a freelancer for McDonald's. They had a magazine called, I think it was Cruise View. So I did writing. I would go out and interview people and write up little articles. So I did that. And then I realized it wasn't enough. I felt like there was this passion in me. And I know the other job I had. I took a job with Robert Morris College in downtown Chicago, and I was their PR director. So again, I was using all my writing skills for that. Mm-hmm. And it was a good job. I liked the people, but it wasn't my passion. And I thought, and we were secure now financially. So I could stop working if I wanted to and go back to school. And so that's what I decided to do. I thought, but when I did that, I thought, I'm just going to get a master's in writing. It was a master's in English, but with a specialization in the writing of poetry, because that's what I was writing at that time, just poetry. Mm. So I got there and I was doing my master's, and I found my tribe. I can't tell you. I live in a suburb 30 miles north of Chicago. There was no one like me here. And suddenly I was with all these people that talked about writing all the time. Books, and did you hear about this? And are you going to this reading on the weekend? And I thought, wow, this is where I belong. So after I was done with the master's, as I was finishing up, I should say, I thought, I'm not done. I haven't learned enough. There's so much more I want to know. And the issue, though, when you do a master's, you don't have to teach. But when you do a PhD, that is required, because the only reason you would be doing a PhD is to teach. I was very nervous about that. I had no experience. I didn't feel I'd be comfortable in front of a classroom. But I said to myself, if you want it, you're just going to have to get over it. And now I'm going to share something I haven't shared very much. What I did, I was so nervous, because I did get accepted. I had to retake my GREs. It was a whole rigmarole. I was able to overcome that fear of speaking in public and leading a classroom, which when you go into a classroom, you don't know what's going to happen. Day to day, I'm an over-preparer, so I had to be extremely prepared. But there were things that would happen that you couldn't prepare for.
But at the college level, it'd be a great opportunity for you to mentor younger writers, I would imagine.
I did, and I enjoyed that very much. I really did. That was awesome. And so I did that teaching as part of my PhD. And once I did get my PhD, you go on the job market. I was offered a tenure track teaching position, but it was in Tennessee. My daughter was about ready to go to first year of college. and she wanted to go in state. So I felt like, no, this doesn't, and it was such a heavy teaching load, I wouldn't be able to write. So I turned it down, which kind of put me no teaching job. So I did other jobs for a few years. I worked at our local hospital and communications department. I worked for a technical writer. I did articles for these medical journals, which were very technical, but it was good. And then a position came up at University of Illinois at Chicago, where I did do my PhD. And it was for someone to come in and administer the internship program in the English department, as well as the nonfiction writing program. And so you would have two big administrative positions you had to fill, and then also to teach once a semester the internship writing course. So I applied and I did get it.
That sounds like a job ideally suited to you.
It was. And I had that real world experience, which they liked. I came in, I wasn't just an academic. I had really worked, as we call it, the real world. So yeah, I had that job for a number of years, and that's where I really got to mentor young people. I really did. I really helped them get positions. And then I also, because it was so successful, and I was working with the head of the English department, he said, what do you think if we develop an internship program for graduate students? So I worked with him and we did develop that. Now, unfortunately, it was short-lived because a new administration came in and they were very against graduate students working in the real world. They thought you only get a PhD to teach and do research. I end up basically, I lost my job. Let's put it that way. Because what they were going to offer me was so below what I had been doing. I would be back to just teaching a course here and there. It was a bit humiliating to me because I had done so much work for them that was helping people. So that's when I started the mystery writing, and again, another shift in my.
That's a sad story because it points to the irrelevancy of colleges, because they really don't prepare people for real life as
You're
much.
right. But you know what? Since I've been gone, another administration came in, and now that they're 100% behind this.
That's great.
Yeah, so they've done a shift. I think it depends who's in charge.
Okay.
So that those other people that came in and got rid of me, and that was very hard for me.
Were you in your 50s at that point?
Yes,
Okay.
I was.
That kind of points to a problem that I hear a lot here with people. They're forced out of jobs they love after they turn 50, and the closer they get to 60, 65.
Yeah, I was forced out. It was very depressing.
I can imagine. Your story also suggests that there might be a correlation between purpose and joy, and that your purpose was to be a writer, but you weren't getting any joy out of it. Is that right? What I understand with some of the things that you were writing until you discovered mystery writing?
I was, okay. When I was, as I said, my specialization is the writing and teaching of poetry, which, okay, let's be realistic. We're going to make a living as a poet. No. But I was well published as a poet, and I did get a lot of joy out of that. And I learned a heck of a lot about writing poetry and being a poet. And I think those skills I was able to translate into fiction writing. If you read my books, you'll see, and I'm not going to say that I go on and on with description, because that's a big no when you're writing a mystery. But my description is so succinct and spot on. And I learned that by writing poetry, being economical with language, and getting the right words to describe something or somebody.
This sounds like a great opportunity for somebody over 50 who might want to pursue their writing. They just write poetry. If it's only for themselves or to share with their friends or family, it's just a great way to keep your mind sharp and to remain creative, I would think.
And I would say to anyone who's thinking of that, read a lot of poetry. That was part of my education, and it helped me write. When you're doing a degree in poetry, you have to read a lot of poetry. Now, I was more not the older poets, but more the contemporary poets, because that's what I was interested in. My other interest was Renaissance drama, believe it or not, because I love Shakespeare and all that. Yeah, yes, write and yes, read. I would say that for any kind of writing, whether it be a memoir or you're going to write a mystery or just a novel, a historical novel, read a lot of them because you're not going to understand it unless you do.
There's a lot of books in the bookshelves behind you. Are they books that are mysteries themselves, or are they more books on how to be a writer?
They're a collage of many books. I have a whole area dedicated to my favorite mysteries. I have a section dedicated to the teaching of writing because I do workshops on occasion. I still do. And then my other passion is art. So the big one back there where all the photographs are, those shelves, the lower ones are poetry, but the upper ones are photography and artists that I really admire and love. I'm a huge George O'Keeffe fan. You're out there in the West, so you know what I'm talking about.
Indeed.
I had a poem that I wrote about her that's in my chapbook because I just admire her so much. And when my husband and I were in New Mexico, we visited, I guess you say Abaqui, where she had home.
Okay.
It was an incredible experience for me.
Very good.
As an artist, a female artist, how she lived and what she did. So yeah, in fact, The Lost Artist, my standalone mystery, is about a female artist. 2 female artists, actually.
If you had to roll the clock back, or had the opportunity to roll the clock back, is there anything you'd be doing differently?
I wish I had started the writing sooner seriously instead of just journaling and a poem here and there. I wish I had, I don't know if maybe confidence or some kind of mentor who would have helped me because I think I would have been, I'm a late bloomer. I'm a total late bloomer. I would have been an earlier bloomer. But you take the path that life gives you and you do the best you can. If I'm an example of anything for people over 50 is I finally did get on the path I wanted to be on.
That's a great story because that's what we're doing here at Forward from 50. It's an ideal opportunity to go back to what your passions were very early in your life, the things that people talked you out of or society talked you out of doing because they told you to do more practical things, or they said women weren't allowed to do this kind of thing, but now they are. So why not jump into it and pursue this kind of thing if it's already been on your mind for many years?
When I was teaching writing at the university, I would tell my students, if you get obsessed about writing about something, trust it and go with it. There's a reason, because that obsession will keep you going through the dark days when you just don't feel like you want to do it.
That's right. There are many dark days when writing a book, aren't there?
Oh, yeah. A lot.
And even if people don't want to write a book, can they write their own life story?
Oh, yeah, memoir. Absolutely. I never intended, believe me, to write a memoir. And I'll tell you, I'll try to make it a short story. I'll try to self-edit. In 1995, I made an incredible discovery researching my mother's father, my maternal grandfather. He has a very strange first name, Azimah Frederick from New Orleans. My mother knew nothing about him. I was between teaching jobs. And this is before Ancestry. So I had to go to the Family History Center, the local one, and I started going through census records. I finally found him on the 1900 Louisiana census. And I found a peculiar thing. He's about 2 or 3. Behind his name and all the Fredericks was the letter B. And when I traced up that column, it said race. And I sat there and I went, does that mean black? So I went and asked the lady who was running the center, and she said, oh yeah, we transcribed those. That's exactly what it means. I won't say what she said. Then she went into all these racial slurs. Okay. So I had no idea. And I went home and I talked to my husband. I talked to a good friend, and my friend said, look, it's the census records. They make mistakes. So she says, here's what you should do. Write to the state of Louisiana as if you are your mother and say you lost your birth certificate. So I did. And I got her birth certificate, and for race, 3 letters, COL, meaning colored.
Your mother?
Yes.
Okay.
No idea. Around this time, my dad became very ill. I couldn't pursue it much more. My mom was in Ohio. I'm in Illinois. So after my father died, I invited her to come visit me because my mother is a very wily person. I knew on the phone she'd get out of it somehow. So I sat her down and I told her what I found. And at first she denied it. And then she said, you can never tell anyone until after I die, because how will I hold my head up with my friends if they know
They know that she is colored?
that she was passing for white,
Okay.
which she did. And I had only had one sibling. I said, can I tell my brother? She said no.
Hmm.
My mother lived another 17 years. I kept her secret. And then she died in 2014. She lived to 92. This is so weird. 3 months later, there used to be a show on PBS called Genealogy Roadshow. They were looking for family mysteries from New Orleans. I applied. They took me on the show. I appeared on the show. They confirmed everything that I thought was true. My mother was passing. They started by showing me the 1940 census. And on there, her and her sister are listed as Negro.
Wow.
My father didn't know. Nobody in my father's family knew. We didn't know. After I was on the show, 3 days later, I get an email from a woman who identifies herself as Stephanie Frederick. I don't know a Stephanie Frederick, but I know that last name. She said, I saw you on the show. I want to tell you, I'm your cousin, and my father, Azima Frederick Jr., is your uncle.
Wow.
I didn't know they existed. When my grandfather apparently had remarried, had a whole other family. In 2015, they invited me for a family reunion in New Orleans, and we got to meet each other. It was incredible.
That is neat. Would you encourage people over 50 to pursue their ancestry like that?
I absolutely do. But do it with an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
People have asked me since I wrote White Like Her, my family story of race and racial passing, based on this whole discovery and my mother's life. And I traced the family, the Fredericks, back to 1700s Louisiana to an enslaved woman by the name of Marta. She had to be open.
Mm-hmm.
But my mom raised us to be open to all races and ethnicities. So that was already in me. So I don't deny any of this. I embrace it. This is my family.
That's a very interesting story, and quite a shock to discover, I'm sure, as an adult, that your family had
no
this
idea who I
secret.
was.
Mm-hmm.
When you get it discovered, that's what my book, What They Never Told Us, is about. When you have these secrets revealed about your identity, somehow you have to integrate that into your new identity. You have to figure out a way to redefine yourself because it's part of the healing process. I didn't feel I had to heal, but the people in the book, What They Never Told Us, sure did. And honestly, you can see what I look like.
Mm-hmm.
No one has questioned my race because I'm so white looking. But once this book came out, every time I gave a talk, that was one of the questions I was asked. So now how do you identify racially?
Mm-hmm.
It took me years to figure that out.
Okay. How do you do that?
In the beginning, I was saying I'm a white woman with Black heritage. And I said that in a bookstore in St. Louis, and a Black woman said, yeah, that's the only way you can identify. Then when I was on the Today Show, said the same thing. About 7 days later, I get skewered by a Black woman on Amazon telling Black people, do not read this woman's book. She's not honoring her Black heritage. So what I finally decided was it didn't matter how I identified. Someone was not going to like it.
Exactly.
They were happy with me.
Mm-hmm.
So that meant I had to figure it out. So it took me a number of years, a lot of thinking, being on these shows and reading and all of this to finally come to the conclusion that there's many things that identify us. You can look at your DNA. So I'm 7 to 9% African. So there's that. Some people look at appearance. In my case, that didn't really apply. You look at your heritage. Okay, I've got that. I look at what my mother's family suffered from the 1700s to up until my mom living in Louisiana, the discrimination, the loss of opportunities. My mother grew up Jim Crow South.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I'm going to honor all of that. And so now I identify as mixed race. And when I give a talk to an audience, I can just see the perplexity sometimes on people's faces. How does she? And I thought, this is a good way to have a dialogue, and we can talk about this. So I talk a little bit about that in What They Never Told Us, because that's part of the beginning of the book where I relate that journey that I went on after hurricane.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting story. My goodness. What a shock to your system.
It was.
Mm-hmm.
It totally was.
Do you have any advice for people over the age of 50 who may be struggling to identify a purpose or a meaningful purpose for their life?
But you said it so well earlier. If there was something early on that you always wanted to do, but because of practicalities, making a living, or maybe you were afraid, maybe there was some fear about it, I would say embrace it. I would say go for it. What you got to lose?
Exactly.
And if it doesn't work, then go on to the next thing.
That's right.
Right? As long as we're breathing, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. And if people are still struggling to find something to be passionate about, do you have any ideas on things that they could do to pursue different avenues or whatever till they discover something that really lights them up?
I don't know. For me, just what interests me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you spend time with? What do you spend most of your time doing? Is this something you want to keep doing? Or maybe, here's another idea. I did a lot of this, volunteering.
Right.
Try volunteering. My husband, after he retired, he was a dentist. After he retired, he thought, this is so funny. He said, this is great. All I'm going to do is sleep in, do nothing. He was bored by month 2. So what? And I would have never guessed he would have done this. We have the Chicago Botanic Garden. He went there and became a master gardener.
Wow.
And now he volunteers at the garden. He volunteers at Lake County Forest Preserves up where we live. It's his passion. I would have never known that was his passion. When there was any gardening to do, I did it because I had summers off. He didn't do it. So somehow, by just trying it, he discovered it. And I got to tell you, it's not only the work, but it's the people. He's made friends. They go out for lunch. This becomes a whole thing.
That's
because
right.
you lose your work community when you retire. And so he had a new work community, but it was a volunteer work community.
That's a great story. And it kind of points to something that we've been talking about frequently in recent months about how you really don't discover your purpose as much as you create it.
That's great.
You discover the thing that really lights you up, and then you build your life around that. How can people connect with you?
Go to my website. This is easy. Maybe my last name, not so easy. www.gaillukasik.com. Or, you can connect to me. And honestly, if you want to send me an email, do it through my site or message, I should say, because one of the people in this latest book actually sent me a private message, but it was through Facebook. So there's a lot of ways to contact me.
Okay.
And I ended up, the story was so interesting, I put it in the book.
Are you active on Facebook?
Very.
Any other
I'm active on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm a member. I've been a member forever of Sisters in Crime in Chicago. So there's a newsletter there. You can find me. I'm not that hard to find.
That's great.
My last name.
Thank you very much for your story today. I appreciate it, especially how you discovered that you need to be authentic and pursuing the things that really interest you. And so thank you for setting that example for the rest of us.
You are so welcome, and thank you for having me on the show.
Gail Lukasik's journey is a testament to resilience, reinvention, and the power of storytelling. Whether she's crafting intricate mystery novels or uncovering the real-life mysteries of hidden identities, Gail approaches writing with curiosity, discipline, and an unshakable passion. Her love for mystery stems from the satisfaction of solving a puzzle and bringing order to a disrupted world. That same narrative structure influenced her memoirs, where uncovering hidden truths became as compelling as any fictional whodunit. Perhaps her most profound revelation came when she discovered her own mixed-race heritage. It was a secret her mother kept for a lifetime. That discovery not only shaped Gail's sense of self, but also deepened her understanding of how identity, history, and family narrative shapes our lives. Through her story, Gail reminds us that it's never too late to start something new, embrace our creative passions, or even redefine who we are. Gail has written an impressive collection of books spanning both fiction and nonfiction. That includes her Lee Gerard mystery series featuring a breast cancer survivor turned investigative journalist who unravels deadly secrets in the scenic but shadowy world of Door County, Wisconsin. Beyond fiction, Gail's personal journey led her to write 2 compelling nonfiction books. Those include White Like Her, My Family's Story of Race and Racial Passing, in which she uncovers her mother's hidden racial identity and explores the complexity of race in America. What They Never Told Us, True Stories of Family Secrets and Hidden Identities Revealed, which is a powerful collection of real-life accounts from people who, like Gail, discovered shocking truths about their origins. If you've ever dreamed of writing a novel, a poem, or even your own life story, Gail encourages you to trust your instincts, push through rejection, and let your passion lead the way. To learn more about Gail and her work, visit her website at www.gaillukasik.com or connect with her on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. For people in the Chicago area, Gail is an active member of Sisters in Crime. It's a group devoted to helping women who like to write crime-based stories. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like this show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.